Hello, we are doing 3.1 multiply by tens. Model each product, draw each model. So we are going to draw to show the answer to the multiplication question. As I'm drawing, I'm going to use these base 10 blocks. Let's review the names. This is called a cube and it represents 1,000 units. These small cubes, we call them units. These and the units represent 1. These are called flats and they represent 100. And these are called rods and they represent 10 each rod, or tens. The cube I represent using a square with a T inside for 1,000. The flat, I draw a square with no letter inside. The rod representing 10 is going to be a stick. And the unit, we use a dot or a small circle. All right, so 2 times 3, I'm going to do 2 rows of 3 dots. And I can see my answer is 6. 2 times 30, I can do 2 rows of tens, of 3 tens, 10, 20, 30. And then I do another one, 10, 20, 30. In all, I have 60. 2 times 300, I'm going to do 2 rows of 3 hundreds. And if I count that, I get 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. And 2 times 3,000, I'm going to make 2 rows of 3 thousands. So inside of each of them, I'm going to put a T for 1,000. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. In class, and we've talked about this before, we discussed the pattern that we notice in the answers or in the products. So I see here when I have 2 times 3, my answer is 6. And then when I have 2 times 30, I almost have the same digits. I have a 2, I have a 3, but this time I have a 0. My answer now has 1 0, just like in the factors. The next one, 2 times 300, I have 2 zeros, and my answer also has 2 zeros. And in the last one, I have 3 zeros, and so my answer will also have 3 zeros. This is going to help us when we're multiplying larger numbers that have a friendly number, anything that ends with zeros. So here we see 2 different ways that we can solve for a multiplication problem with 2 digits or more, or with 2 digits for this example. And looking at the first example over here, we have 40 times 20, and we can use our knowledge of place value to help us solve. So we can say that 40 times 20 is 40 times 2 tens, because I know 2 tens is 20. I have 10, 20. I know it's the same thing. So now I can multiply 40 times 2 tens, and that will give me 80 tens. But 80 tens equals 800. I drew here 80 tens. And I know that when I have 10 tens, I have 100. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Each of these rows represents 100. So I can count 80 tens. Let's see. This is 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, and 800. So 80 tens is 800. In the second example, they want us to use or to think about the associative property. And that means that when you have multiplication, when you're multiplying different factors, you can group them however you'd like, and you will still get the same answer. So sometimes we might do that because maybe there are two numbers we can multiply that are easier than another set of two numbers. So let's take a look at 12 times 30. Here they're showing us that 12 times 30 can also be 12 times 3 times 10. 3 times 10. Oh, 3 times 10 is 30. 3 times 10 is 30. So they decomposed or broke down this number. Okay, so I see they grouped here the 3 times 10 first. But because of the associative property, we can group two other factors in our problem. We can group them how we'd like, or in a way that is easier for us. Well, 12 times 3 is a multiplication fact that we know. So let's start from there. That way our last step is to multiply by a friendly number, which is 10. So 12 times 3 is 36. And now we can do 36 times 10. And that's easy because I just do 36 times 1 and I add a 0. So that's 36 and then one more 0. For the next 10 problems, you can solve any way that you know how. You can use a standard algorithm, which I will show you in a moment, or you can use the methods that they showed us in the examples above. You might also know a different way to do these multiplication problems. Okay, 70 times 40. All I need to know is 7 times 4, which is 28, and then I have to add 2 zeros. And my answer is 2,800. 50 times 80, I do 5 times 8, which is 40, and then I add the 2 zeros. So don't make the mistake of thinking my answer only has 2 zeros, because you have to see what happens when you multiply the first two digits. So my answer is 4,000. Let's go to number 5 and number 6, number 7, and number 8 before we do number 3 and 4. All right, number 5, 9 times 1 is 9, and then I add my 2 zeros. 900 is my answer to 90 times 10. 4 times 6 is 24, and I add my 2 zeros. So my answer to 40 times 60 is 2,400. 2 times 7 is 14. I add my 2 zeros to my answer, and the product of 20 times 70 is 1,400. 11 times 3 is 33, and I add one more 0. And so the product of 11 times 30 is 330. Let's take a look at number 3 and number 4. Well, 24 times 90, I don't know. There is no short or fast fact for 24 times 90, but I can use the standard algorithm here, which we learned last week. 24 times 9, 9 times 4 is 36, 9 times 2 is 18, plus 3, 19, 20, 21, 21. So I have 216, and then I have to add one more 0. So the product of 24 times 90 is 2,160. That's the way that we solve those kind of problems in class last week. But here's another way you can solve. You can decompose or break apart these numbers, these factors, but you have to think of multiplication. So what two factors equal to 45? 9 times 5 is 45. And what two factors make 60? 10 and 6. There are other answers that can make 60, but I want to have numbers with zeros in them or multiples of 10 because I know I can multiply a lot faster and a lot more accurate with multiples of 10. So in thinking about the associative property, I know I can multiply any of these factors. I can group them in any way I'd like to and still get the same answer at the end. So I'm going to group them in a way that I think is easy. Let's take a look. So here I grouped 9 times 10, and then I multiplied that by 5 times 6. I chose these numbers because both give me numbers that end in 0. So 9 times 10 is 90, and 5 times 6 is 30. And I know how to do this because 9 times 3 is 27, and then I add 2 zeros. This is a different way for you to solve these kinds of multiplication problems. Number 9 is 12 times 4, which is 48, and one more zero. 480 is the multiplication answer, or the product, of 12 times 40. 15 times 50. I can do this in various ways. If I use the standard algorithm, I will do 15 times 5, and then I'll add a 0. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. My answer is 750. Or I could do it thinking about the associative property and decomposing or breaking down one of my factors. So I look at this number and I think, okay, what makes 15? What two numbers multiplied together make 15? Well, I know 3 times 5 make 15. It's a lot easier to work with these smaller numbers. I can also break down 50 by thinking of the two numbers that multiply to 50, which are 5 times 10. Now, I know the associative property says I can group them in any way, but the commutative property lets me know that I can multiply them in whichever order I want. So I'm going to figure out a way that I can multiply this where I don't have to use that standard algorithm. So let's see. I am going to multiply 5 times 5 first. So I'm crossing those out so that I don't get confused about what I used. And 5 times 5 equals 25. Now I have to multiply 25 by either 3 or by 10. I kind of want to leave 10 for the end because I know when I do that, I'm just adding a 0. So let me see. 25. Oh, and 25 times 3, that's easy because 25 is like a quarter. And I know that 3/4 is 75 cents. So 25 times 3 equals 75. Okay, so I've used the 2 5s, and now times 3, right? I used the 2 5s, and now I've used the 3. Now there's only one more left, and that's the 10. This one right here. So 75 times 10, I can do this because it's just 75 and one more 0. So my answer is 750. 15 times 50 is 750. Which method do you like the most? What is the easiest way for you to solve? I know for me, I like using the standard algorithm over here. I can use that for all these problems and then just add the zeros accordingly. But maybe you'll use different strategies depending on the problem. That's totally okay. And on Friday, the last thing that we looked at that may be a little bit new is finding the missing factor. So this would be 11 through 16. And this is how we think about it. We have to literally read what the problem says. 50 times what number equals 1,500. But I'm going to read that just thinking about the digits in the beginning of the number like this. 5 times what number equals 15? Because I know that all those zeros, I can just add them back in. Watch. 5 times what number equals 15? Oh, 5 times 3. Am I done? No, not yet, because my answer has 2 zeros. And my factors here, well, I only have 1 zero for this number, so I know this factor also needs a 0, so that we have 2 zeros on the left and 2 zeros on the right. Therefore, the missing factor is 30. You should have a 30 in this spot. Let's try that again. For number 12, I ask myself, 2 times what number equals 18? Well, I know 2 times 9 equals 18. Am I done? Nope, I have to look at the zeros. My answer has 2 zeros, so that means that my factors have to have a total of 2 zeros. I have 1 here, so I need 1 more. Therefore, my answer is 90. Let's keep going. Remember to practice asking yourselves these questions, the same question, when you're solving the problem. 6 times what number equals 42? Oh, I know 6 times 7 is 42. But am I done? Let's see. My answer, or my product, has 2 zeros. So my factors have to have a total of 2 zeros as well. Well, here's 1 zero, so I need 1 more. And my answer is 70. 14 through 16 is exactly the same, except that you ask the question differently. You say what number times, for example, what number times 8 equals 64? Well, I know that 8 times 8 equals 64. But am I done? I have 2 zeros here in my product, so my factors have to have a total of 2 zeros. I have 1 zero, and now I have 2. My answer is 80. Let's take a look at number 21. It says the product of my number and 60 is 3,000. What is the number? Let me try to write that using just numbers and symbols. The product, well, I know the product is the answer to a multiplication problem. These are factors, or this is a factor, this is another factor. So let's see, the product, so the answer of my number and 60 is 3,000. And so 3,000 is the product of my number, I don't know what that is, oh, and 60. So 60 is one of the factors, and I don't know what this one is. Then the question says, what is the number? Well, I know how to solve these. I just did them up here. Same kind of question. So I asked myself, what number times 6 equals 30? And that answer is 5. 5 times 6 is 30. But I'm not done. I see my answer here has 3 zeros. So on the left side, I also have to have 3 zeros. But this can be tricky because you have to remember that 5 times 6 is 30. It already has a 0 in that answer. And then you add 2 more zeros and you get 3,000. Don't get tricked and think you have to make 500 times 60. That's going to give you a different answer if you solve it.